Pamela kissed William right in front of me, on the stage, under my name, with everyone watching. I hadn't even cut the cake yet. The ballroom lights dimmed just enough to frame them like the lead characters in a romantic movie. My cousin's hand was on her waist. My fiancée, still wearing the bracelet I gave her last week, tilted her head and smiled before she leaned in. Soft, slow, shameless. There was no gasp in the crowd, just stunned silence and the sound of my father's fork clinking against a wine glass. Then came the murmurs, the awkward laughter. Someone whispered, "It's probably a dare." Another said, "Maybe it's for content." I didn't move, didn't blink. My fingers dug slightly into the edge of the tablecloth as I stared at the wax melting around the birthday candles, still burning in front of me. 29 of them. One for each year of mistakes, apparently. Pamela pulled back, adjusted her dress like nothing had happened, and turned toward me with a playful grin. William didn't even look at me, his arm still draped around her as if this was his event, his stage, his woman. I stood. The music kept playing behind me, some upbeat jazz that now felt ironic. I picked up the mic slowly, the same one Pamela had planned to use to toast me. My voice didn't shake, not even once. "Thank you all for coming," I said calmly. "It means a lot to spend my birthday surrounded by people who reveal themselves in such unexpected ways." A few people chuckled nervously. I turned toward Pamela, then to William. "Since this is clearly a night for surprises, I have one too." Marva, seated 3 rows back in a navy silk gown, gave the slightest nod. She had a calm, unreadable expression. But I could see it, the fire behind her eyes. She had warned me. She always knew. I pulled a small box from my jacket pocket and held it up. "This," I said, "is something I've waited 3 months to allow." I handed the box to Marva without saying another word. She rose, walked toward the projector, and connected her tablet. The ballroom screen behind us lit up with a black and white teaser video. A flame flickers on screen. Then words appeared. "Infidelity, a scent by Michael Black, coming tonight, exclusively trademarked." Whispers turned into gasps. Pamela's smile froze. The candle collection had her brand's font, her signature aesthetic. Even the logo looked familiar, but legally, it was mine now. I had filed everything 6 weeks ago, including the scent formulas she once pitched as a gift to the modern woman. Pitched, but never protected. Because she never thought I'd need protection. From her. William's brows furrowed. "What is this?" I finally looked him dead in the eye. "The first flame I'm lighting tonight." Then I turned back to the cake and blew out every candle in one breath. The room erupted, not in applause, not in shock, in pure, electric disbelief. Pamela lunged forward. "You can't do this, Michael, that's my—" "No," I interrupted coldly. "That was yours, before you handed it to me, before you kissed him, before you underestimated me." She blinked, like she was trying to place herself in the timeline, like maybe the kiss had erased the last 6 months of betrayal I'd quietly documented. She looked around, searching for someone, anyone, to back her up. Even her influencer friends had their phones lowered now, unsure what to record and what to delete. "I made that line," she said, almost whispering. "And I made it legal," I replied. Marva returned to my side, holding the second box, a candle labeled, "The Other Man." She handed it to me without a word. I placed it on the center of the cake table, right between the melted candles and the shattered silence. William finally stepped forward. "Mike, man, don't," I said. "We share blood, but not spine." He stayed quiet after that. I looked around at the sea of forced smiles, wide eyes, and people calculating whether to stay or slink out the back door. Then I raised my glass. "To be honest," I said. Marva clinked her glass against mine. And somewhere behind me, Pamela's empire started to smolder. My name is Michael Linwood, and up until last night, I thought my life was exactly where it needed to be. I was 29, a rising executive director of a boutique tech firm that specializes in product design and scent-driven smart home devices. I had a penthouse in downtown Chicago, a fiancé who was considered the face of next-gen influencer branding, and a cousin I once called my brother. Now, I have one burned bridge, one trademarked revenge product, and a glass heart that's been through a blender, but still beats steady. I wasn't always the composed type. I was the awkward middle child, never quite loud enough to be noticed, never invisible enough to be ignored. My older brother joined the military, my younger sister became a travel blogger with 1 million followers. And me? I liked the quiet stuff. Systems, mechanics. The art of how things connected, wires, scent molecules, emotional triggers. If you asked me at 14 what I wanted, I'd have said, control. I met Pamela 4 years ago at a product showcase in LA. She walked into the booth like the whole city owed her rent. Blonde waves, flawless skin, a designer bag that probably cost more than my quarterly bonus. I was explaining the scent sensor features on a new diffuser when she interrupted mid-demo to core. Wrecked my phrasing, not air mist, olfactory delivery. She was right, and I should have walked away. But she smiled. And I made the classic mistake most men make when faced with fire in lipstick. I mistook confidence for character. We started seeing each other a month later. Her online persona fascinated me, half ambition, half illusion. I'd never dated anyone in the spotlight. Every dinner came with photos, every argument risked becoming content. But when it was just the two of us, on the couch, in sweatpants, eating noodles she didn't post, I thought I saw the real Pamela. The one who told me about her mother's debt, about the year she slept in her car while building her brand, about the painkillers she once depended on. I told her everything too. The startup that failed, my panic attacks, the way my father used to throw silence harder than fists. We weren't perfect, but I thought we were real. I proposed on a Thursday night, no cameras, no candles, just her, me, and a rainy window. She said yes before I even got the ring fully open. It was supposed to be us against the noise. Then there's William. William Linwood, my father's nephew, technically my cousin, practically my shadow for most of our lives. He lived with us during high school when his parents divorced. My mom treated him like another son. He and I shared clothes, sports teams, and heartbreaks. He could talk anyone into anything and walk out without consequence. The golden boy, the wild card, the mistake I ignored for too long. Pamela met William at a New Year's Eve party 2 years ago. She said he reminded her of early YouTube energy, whatever that meant. He was charismatic, charming, a little unpolished in a way that felt rebellious next to my suits. I saw the way he looked at her. I saw the way she pretended not to notice. I let it slide. I always let things slide. Because I loved her, because I thought she'd never risk something real for something reckless. I realized how wrong I was when I found the first message. It was hidden in her app drafts, accidentally left open on her tablet. A saved video she never posted, her in full makeup, whispering something into the lens. When he looks at me, I forget I ever settled. She didn't say a name, but it wasn't hard to guess. Still, I stayed. Because leaving felt like failure, because confrontation felt like war. So I played it safe. Cold, calculated, and I waited, I documented, I backed up. I tracked the candle line she wanted to launch but never legally claimed. I filed for the trademarks, I designed prototypes, I looped in Marva Fenton, my assistant, my right hand, the one person who saw through Pamela months before I did. Marva didn't smile often, but when she did, it meant something. She wore practicality like armor, coffee-stained notes, buttoned-up blazers, tight buns that unraveled only when she was too exhausted to care. She had a laugh like gravel and a mind like steel. I hired her out of a Harvard internship program, but she never acted like someone fresh out of school. From day one, she organized my chaos before I knew it existed. I remember the day she slid a folder across my desk, Pamela's inspired pitch deck compared to Marva's original. Side by side, time-stamped, unmistakable. She stole this, Marva said. She borrowed it, I offered weakly. She sold it as hers, she clarified. That was the day something inside me shifted. Not because I'd discovered Pamela was dishonest, I think, deep down, I already knew. But because Marva wasn't emotional, she was surgical, and I realized that the only person who had truly been protecting me wasn't the woman I shared a bed with, but the one who stayed behind after hours fixing every broken piece of my life, including the one I hadn't noticed yet. Still, I didn't act on it, not yet. Instead, I watched. I let Pamela keep digging her hole while I quietly prepared my ladder. When my birthday approached, she insisted on throwing the party. A luxury moment, she called it. content with class. I let her. I didn't care about cake or celebration anymore. I only cared about watching her expose herself, because people like Pamela always do. Not because they're careless, but because they think they're untouchable. William RSVP'd late. He asked if he could bring a date. I laughed. Just bring your conscience for once. He showed up empty-handed. The rest, you know. Now here I am, 1 day later, sitting in my office while the world finishes consuming the scandal. Pamela's social feeds are dead. Sponsors have dropped her. She called me 15 times this morning. I didn't answer. William posted a gym selfie, captioned, "Keep lifting, even when the weight's betrayal." I blocked him. Marva walked in with coffee just now. No words, just her presence, steady, warm, safe. And I realize something as I look at her across the desk. I may have lost a fiancé, but I think I've just started to recognize the person I was always meant to stand beside. Not the one who kissed with cameras watching, but the one who stayed long after the flames burned out. The morning after the birthday party, the headlines were already out. Linwood Tech heir's fiancé caught kissing cousin at private event. Pamela Rose and William Linwood spark family feud at luxury ballroom bash. Is this the end of Michael Linwood's engagement? I didn't check the tabloids directly. Marva had set up a filtered inbox that captured all mentions of our names online. By 8:00 a.m., there were over 300 emails. My phone buzzed endlessly with notifications, publicist calls, investor inquiries, and texts from people I hadn't spoken to in years. But the worst one wasn't digital, it was physical. A handwritten note slipped under my apartment door. It was from Pamela. She must have written it during the night, before I locked her out of every account, every keycard, every access point into my life. The note smelled faintly of her signature perfume, vanilla and orchid, but now it made my stomach twist. "Michael, you don't understand what you saw. William kissed me. Not the other way around. It was a dumb dare, a stupid moment. I didn't want to ruin your night. I just panicked. I know it looked bad, but please, can we talk? You're the only person who's ever seen me fully. Please don't shut me out. Love, Pamela." I folded the letter once and placed it in the shredder. She didn't know I had already seen the security footage. A close-up camera had captured the exact moment Pamela whispered something to William right before she leaned in. Her hand gripped his blazer. He didn't pull her, he stood still. The initiative had been hers. And it wasn't a dare. It was planned. There was something in her eyes, performance. Like she knew she'd be photographed, like she wanted it archived. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was theatrical. By midday, our legal team contacted me. Pamela had reached out demanding a meeting, not through apology, not through humility, through her lawyer. "She's claiming partial creative rights over the candle line," said Amanda, my IP attorney. "She's implying she helped develop the brand identity." "She pitched a name and stole a deck," I said coldly. "That doesn't make her a founder." "Still," Amanda added, "she's got public sympathy. Some think you overreacted, that you ambushed her during your own birthday party." "Good," I said. "Let them think that. I've already lit the match. Now I want her to feel the heat." That night, I returned to the office. Marva was already there. She'd taken off her blazer, sleeves rolled up, a pair of glasses on as she reviewed the trademark dispute documentation. "You should go home," I told her. She looked up. "You should too." "I don't think I can sleep." "Me neither." We stayed in the conference room until 1:00 a.m., reviewing files, comparing Pamela's public statements with the pitch documents. Everything Pamela had ever tried to pass off as original had fingerprints, mostly Marva's. Typography choices, scent formulations, product launch timelines. She'd repackaged someone else's brilliance as her own, and for a while, I'd let her, because I was in love. Now, I was just disappointed, not angry, not shattered, just hollow. At 2:00 a.m., I closed my laptop and turned toward Marva. "I feel like I've been sleepwalking for 3 years, I said. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. I knew she understood. The next day, things got messier. Pamela posted a video. No fancy edits, no filters, just her sitting in what looked like her parents' guest room. "I never meant to hurt Michael," she said, voice trembling. "He's the kindest man I've ever known. I was confused. I made mistakes, but he blindsided me at our party and destroyed my business. I didn't deserve that. Comments poured in immediately. Divided. Some people believed her. Others, who had seen the candle line, the security footage leaks, the older posts where she hinted at smothering silence in her relationship, started to connect dots. They didn't like what they saw. I didn't post a rebuttal. I didn't need to. Instead, I posted one sentence on my verified account. I've always believed in letting the fire speak for itself. The post went viral in minutes. Marva laughed when she saw it. You're becoming poetic. I'm becoming tired, I replied. William texted me that night. Yo, we should talk. It wasn't what it looked like. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Call me. I didn't reply. He followed up 2 hours later. You're really gonna burn the whole thing down over one kiss? Seriously? Over a girl who's probably using you too? That one made me pause. The irony. The man who spent half his life borrowing from me, shoes, ideas, now women, trying to accuse me of being manipulated. I showed the text to Marva. She read it quietly, then handed the phone back. He's panicking, she said. I know. Good. I had never heard that kind of edge in her voice before. That week, Pamela's sponsors terminated contracts. A perfume company released a statement denying any collaboration. Fashion Nova blocked her. Even a podcast she had guested on took down her episode. The only people who stood by her were other influencers who feared their own turn in the fire. And William? He got cut out of the family group chats. My uncle issued a formal apology to my father. My sister told me Mom cried for 2 hours, not because of what Pamela did, but because of how quiet I'd been through it. She said you always go silent when you're most hurt. I didn't confirm or deny it. I just kept moving. One night, while reviewing final scent batch approvals in the lab, I looked over and saw Marva sitting cross-legged on the counter, eating from a Tupperware box. What is that? I asked. Leftover Thai. Is that allowed near the oils? No, she grinned. But I'm starving and no one's watching. I am. You don't count. That made me pause. Why not? She blinked, then shrugged. Because you've already seen me at my worst, so I don't need to impress you. She didn't mean it romantically, not yet. But something about the way she said it, it stuck. Pamela had once said to me, I want to be your perfect. Marva never wanted to be perfect, she wanted to be present. The difference hit hard. 2 days later, we got the cease and desist letter from Pamela's lawyer. It was long, aggressive, claimed emotional abuse, creative theft, reputation sabotage. Marva handed it to me silently. I read through the document, then placed it aside. I want a full report prepared, I said. We'll respond once the media finishes tearing it apart. Marva nodded. On it. As she turned to leave, I called out, Marva. She stopped at the doorway. Thank you, for staying. She looked back, eyes soft. Someone has to hold the candle steady while you burn the rest. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment the conflict stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like permission. There's a moment, right before your heart breaks, when your mind whispers, this can't be real, not because it's impossible, but because if you acknowledge it, if you accept it, then the damage is permanent. I lived in that moment for weeks after the party. I kept waking up at 4 a.m., drenched in sweat, expecting to find Pamela beside me, not because I missed her, because I'd forgotten she was gone. I'd roll over, feel the empty side of the bed, and remember all at once, the kiss, the betrayal, the lie that looked like love. It's terrifying how easy it is to forget pain while dreaming, and cruel how quickly it returns when you wake. My apartment felt like a mausoleum. Every object screamed of her, perfume bottles, untouched skincare, her old phone charger still plugged into the wall. I could have packed it all into a box, could have burned it, but I didn't. I left it there as evidence, as punishment, not for her, for me. I blamed myself more than I admitted, for choosing her, for ignoring the signs, for trusting William, for being so in love with an idea that I let the reality rot in silence. Marva noticed. She never said much. Just quietly started sending over meal deliveries I didn't ask for. Left extra project folders on my desk to keep me focused. Took 2 steps closer every time I drifted 2 steps back. She never forced me to talk. But one afternoon, she sat across from me in the conference room and said, "You're allowed to grieve someone who was never real." I didn't answer. Not right away. Eventually I whispered, "What if I loved the version I made up?" Marva leaned forward. "Then mourn that version, just don't invite it back." I hadn't cried once after it all happened. Not at the party. Not when I saw the footage. Not even when the lawyer handed me the defamation notice. But that night, alone in the elevator, after Marva's words settled into my bones, I broke. I slid down the wall of the elevator and wept silently into my fists, too proud to sob aloud even when no one could hear me. That was the moment I realized I hadn't just lost Pamela. I had lost the version of myself I was when I believed in her. And the grief that came with that was heavier than I expected. I stopped checking social media. The headlines blurred together. One day she was a villain, the next, a victim. William posted something about growth through storms. I blocked him. Again. My parents called every few days, carefully avoiding the subject unless I brought it up. I didn't. My mother asked if I was okay. My father did. And ask at all, just told me to keep working. Sometimes I wondered which approach hurt more. I buried myself in the company. The candle line had already launched, but now we were scaling. Demand had tripled. Irony sells. I did interviews I didn't want to do, answered polite questions from polite journalists who all wanted to ask the same thing but didn't dare. How does it feel to make money off your own heartbreak? The truth, it didn't feel like anything. It felt numb, efficient, like monetized pain. One night, Marva and I stayed at the lab reviewing the fragrance expansion schedule. It was past midnight, the air was heavy with oils and unsaid things. I sat on the counter, arms folded, and asked, "Do you think I'm broken?" Marva looked up from her notes. "No," she said simply. "Then why does it feel like everything I touch either leaves or burns?" She didn't speak immediately. When she did, her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "Because you confuse loving with fixing. And some people aren't meant to be fixed." That hit harder than anything Pamela ever said. I stared at Marva. She didn't flinch, just met my gaze steadily. "How do you know that?" I asked. She shrugged. "Because I used to be that person too." There was something in her eyes then, something I hadn't seen before. A history, a weight, a scar. We didn't talk about it further, but something shifted in the silence. The next few weeks blurred, lawsuits, endorsements, strategy sessions. Pamela's team threatened to sue over intentional defamation. My team countered with screenshots and timestamps. Public sentiment swung back and forth like a pendulum, but I stayed still in the middle. Marva handled most of the legal communication. I stopped attending the meetings. I didn't have the stomach for it anymore. What I did have was a deep, growing fear, one I didn't dare admit. What if this becomes me? What if I become nothing more than the man who lit his life on fire just to prove he could? What if I can't move forward? One night, I returned home to find a gift bag at my door. Inside was a small candle. The label read, "Closure." I blinked. No branding, no note. But I knew Marva's handwriting anywhere. I lit it that night. And for the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. The dreams weren't peaceful, but they were honest. I dreamed of Pamela standing at the edge of a cliff, holding the proposal ring I once gave her. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I thought this meant I could be enough." Then she dropped it into the ocean. And I turned away. When I woke, I remembered every detail. And I didn't feel grief. I felt peace. The next morning, I arrived early to the office. Marva was already there, as always. I set a coffee on her desk. She looked up, surprised. "What's this?" "For staying," I said. She smiled faintly. "I told you, someone has to." I looked at her for a long time, then I asked the question I'd been too afraid to say. "Do you think I'll ever love again?" Marva didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said. "Why? Are you so sure?" "Because you're still asking." That answer lived in my chest the rest of the day. I thought about what it meant to start over, not just romantically, but spiritually, emotionally, quietly. To be able to say, "I was hurt, I was wrecked, but I am not done." Pamela still posted vague things online. She started a podcast about healing. William disappeared from public view altogether. last I heard, he'd left the city. It didn't matter anymore. I had stopped tracking them, stopped caring. My pain had become fertilizer. And from it, something was growing. Something I wasn't ready to name yet. But maybe soon. Maybe soon, I would. I thought the fire was done. I had closure. I had peace. I was quiet. But like all unfinished stories, something always waits behind the silence. It came on a Tuesday morning, disguised as a brown envelope. Marva found it first. She placed it on my desk with no comment, just a furrowed brow. There was no sender name, no branding, just my name handwritten across the front. The ink was uneven, rushed. Inside, there were 3 things: a folded document, a printed photo, and a USB drive. Marva stood still as I opened it. The document was a partial contract, a licensing agreement. For closure. Except it wasn't from our company. It was signed 3 months ago, 2 months before the launch, by a holding company I'd never heard of. One registered under Pamela's name. It licensed Closure's design and sent formula to a third-party brand overseas, her brand. And the second signature? William Linwood. I didn't speak. I just stared. Pamela had sold Closure before it ever existed. Before she kissed William, before she begged for forgiveness, before I lit that candle and thought I was healing. She had already turned my healing into profit. The photo confirmed it. It was grainy but clear enough. Pamela and William, seated in a dim cafe, shaking hands with 2 people in suits. A blurry bottle on the table, a prototype. My prototype. Marva remained silent. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. She saw it on my face, the way my jaw locked, the way my throat refused to swallow. I picked up the USB and plugged it into my laptop. A folder opened instantly. Inside, meeting recordings, voice memos, document drafts, and 1 video, William talking to someone on a phone call. She doesn't even know I registered the scent under her name, he said, laughing. She thinks it's a joint venture, but by the time it blows up, I'll already have flipped the rights. Mikey's too busy licking his wounds to notice. The voice on the other end said something unintelligible. William responded, he's obsessed with control, let him think he's got it. She's the face, I'm the engine, and the clown doesn't even know he's building our launch pad. I felt everything and nothing at once. There it was. Not just betrayal, but orchestration. A complete structure, brick by brick, built off my vulnerability. Pamela wasn't just impulsive, she was complicit. William wasn't just opportunistic. He was the architect. And I had been a blueprint, used, hollowed out, reduced. Marva moved first. She reached for the documents and started scanning them silently. Who sent this? I asked. No return address, she replied. Could be a leak, could be regret. Could be a warning, I murmured. By noon, we'd verified everything. The holding company was real, registered in Panama. The ownership trail was tangled, but we confirmed that William was listed as an executive partner. Pamela's signature existed on 5 deals across 2 continents, licensing variations of the Closure formula under different name. See Afterglow, Quiet End, Reignite. Each contract promised exclusivity, each deal violated our intellectual property. And the worst part, they were already live. Somewhere across the ocean, my grief was being sold in boutique packaging under her name. I called Amanda. Our IP lawyer didn't even hesitate. We're going to court. Full injunctions. International pursuit. They've broken almost every clause in your original registration. I nodded, barely hearing her. This wasn't about money anymore. This was theft, of trust, of narrative, of memory. That night, I sat in the empty lab with all the lights off, the only glow coming from a candle I hadn't yet named. Marva walked in quietly and sat beside me. For the first time, I looked at her differently. Not as a colleague, not as an assistant, but as the one person who had never once flinched. You okay? She asked softly. No, I said. She didn't respond, just wait. I thought I was done hurting, I added. But this feels worse. Because it's not just about the relationship anymore, she said. It's about the insult, about being played. I nodded. Then I whispered, Do you think I'm stupid? No? Naive? No. Blind? She finally paused. Not blind, just loyal to the wrong story. That stuck. Loyal to the wrong story. I stared at the candlelight. I had built everything, my business, my brand, my peace, on the assumption that the storm had passed. But storms don't end just because you close your eyes. They end when you finally step out of them. I stood up. Marva watched me, eyes steady. What now? She asked. Now, I said, we take back the fire. The next week was war. We filed full legal action across 3 jurisdictions. We released a press statement, not defensive, but factual. We exposed the paper trail, the contracts, the audio, the timeline. We didn't mention names. We didn't need to. Pamela tried to post a story saying, some people will always try to rewrite history. But the comments turned quickly, receipts spoke louder than rehearsed tears. William? He vanished again. Cowards always do. A major distributor pulled their deal with the Reignite line. The boutique that launched Afterglow issued an apology and took down the listings. Pamela's face, once everywhere, faded from the front page. And I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, but I also felt something else. Whole. Because this time, I hadn't responded with emotion. I had responded with the truth. I had shown the world that quiet doesn't mean weak. That grief doesn't mean surrender. And that candle I lit, it wasn't just for her career, it was for me too. The court date was set. International violation of trade agreement, unauthorized commercial use of protected property, intentional branding infringement. Our case was airtight. Even Amanda, who had seen her share of corporate chaos, said it was one of the cleanest sets of evidence she'd ever worked with. We weren't just filing paperwork. We were preparing an execution. Pamela's lawyers requested an out-of-court settlement. Twice. I declined. Twice. Not because I wanted the drama, but because I wanted the truth. For once, I wanted the whole thing to be documented, judged, recorded, not filtered through a PR statement or diluted behind vague captions. Let the world see what betrayal looked like on paper, let them smell the receipts on burning wax. On the day of the hearing, I wore black, no tie. Just precision. Marva stood beside me in a slate gray suit. She had her hair pulled back into a tight braid, clipboard in hand, energy sharp enough to slice. William didn't show. Coward. Pamela did. She arrived in cream, hair curled, lips bare, makeup barely visible. The humbled look, the I didn't mean to costume. We didn't speak. We just took our places. The court wasn't glamorous, just fluorescent lighting, clean wood panels, and a room filled with silence thicker than air. We presented first. Amanda went over everything, registration filings, time-stamped pitch decks, licensing agreements she signed, audio from the USB, a timeline of theft. Then came the photos, Pamela and William in meetings, product prototypes, wire transfers between shell companies they thought we'd never trace. Every slide that appeared on the screen was another nail. Pamela didn't blink. Not until the last one. A photo I had debated including until the night before. Not proof of theft, but proof of me. It was a frame from my security footage at home, from the night after my birthday. I was sitting alone in my living room, holding the ring I once planned to use to repropose after our first rocky year. The look on my face, defeat, exhaustion, grief. Your Honor, Amanda said calmly, we are not asking the court to rule on emotion, but we are showing you intent. Ms. Rose didn't simply violate intellectual property laws, she weaponized intimacy, she accessed private knowledge through personal connection and used it for personal profit. Pamela's lawyer objected. Speculative. Withdrawn, Amanda said, before continuing smoothly. We request full compensation for profits made, an injunction against her current lines, and a permanent block on her using any trademarks or brand assets associated with Linwood Creative or its subsidiaries. The judge nodded. Ms. Rose? Her lawyer stood and tried to soften the blow. Pamela was confused. Pamela believed she had co-created the product. Pamela hadn't realized William had made such decisions behind her back. Pamela had trusted the wrong people. She did not act with malicious intent, her lawyer concluded. She acted with misplaced trust. Pamela looked at me, finally, her eyes watered. I didn't return the gaze. The judge requested a recess. A brief break before the final ruling. Marva and I stepped outside into the concrete corridor of the courthouse. We stood there in silence until she handed me a bottle of water. "You good?" she asked. "No," I said. "But I'm here." She gave the smallest smile. "That's enough." Pamela approached 10 minutes later. No cameras, no lawyers, just her. She walked slowly, like someone rehearsing vulnerability. "Michael," she said, barely above a whisper. I didn't respond. "I didn't know," she said. "Not the whole plan, not all of it." I turned. "Just enough to sign your name on stolen work?" "I thought William was protecting me," she said. "He told me you'd locked me out of everything, that you were replacing me, that Marva—" "Careful," I said quietly. "Don't drag her name into this. She's the only person in this entire mess who's never lied." Pamela's eyes darkened. "Do you love her?" I didn't answer, because the truth wasn't hers to hear anymore. She stepped closer. "I was scared," she said. "Everything was crumbling, the deals, the followers, the brand. I didn't know who I was without it." "You could have asked for help," I said. "You could have stayed, talked, fought." "I didn't know how." "No," I replied. "You didn't want to try." Silence stretched between us. Then she said something I hadn't expected. "You were always too quiet," she said, "too still, like a lake that looked calm but would drown you if you went too deep." I stared at her. And for the first time, I saw not a villain, but a reflection. Of someone who never knew how to handle stillness. Who only trusted chaos because it was louder than truth. She took a breath. "Do you hate me?" "No," I said. "That would mean I still think of you." The bailiff called us back in. Final ruling, judgment in our favor. Pamela would pay damages, terminate her product lines, and issue a written public statement acknowledging her breach. But that wasn't the moment I'll remember. This was. As we exited the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. I ignored them all, except one. "Michael, is this justice?" I stopped, looked dead into the camera. "It's the beginning," I said. "Not just for me, for anyone who's ever been betrayed and stayed quiet. This isn't revenge, this is accountability. And I hope every person watching, every person who's ever felt like their voice didn't matter, knows that silence doesn't mean surrender." Marva stood beside me, calm and composed. We walked past the flashes and into the waiting car. Inside, I leaned back and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. Marva looked at me. "You ready?" "For what?" "To stop surviving." I smiled faintly. "Almost." That night, we didn't work. We sat on my balcony, candles between us, city lights below. I wanted to hate her, I admitted, so badly. But now that it's done, I don't feel hate, just space. "That's grief healing," she said. I looked at her, at the quiet strength, the loyalty that never once faltered, the fire that burned slowly, patiently, never once asking for fuel. "You know what hurts most?" I said. "It's not that she betrayed me, it's that I let her." Marva shook her head. "You loved me, that's not a mistake." I trusted her with my peace. And she lost it. Silence again. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my throat for weeks. "Why did you stay?" Marva looked at me. Then she said, "Because I wanted to be where the truth lived, even if it hurt." I leaned forward, rested my elbows on the table. "And now?" She didn't hesitate. "Now I want to be where the healing begins." I reached across the table, took her hand. And for the first time since the candle lit, I felt warmth without smoke. It took exactly 90 days for Pamela's empire to collapse. Not burn, not implode. Collapse, slowly, publicly, and in full view. It started with the ruling, of course. The court injunction gutted her entire inventory. The refunds alone nearly bankrupted her. Then came the breach notices from brands who had partnered with her internationally, each demanding their share of compensation for fraudulently licensed products. The scent lines in Europe and Asia were pulled from shelves overnight. Then came the sponsors, the agencies, the tech platforms. Pamela was suspended from multiple influencer networks due to ongoing intellectual property disputes. PR firms refused to touch her. Even her apology video posted at 2 a.m. in a trembling voice and no makeup couldn't repair the damage. But I wasn't done yet. I waited. Until she was quiet. Until she had nothing left to spin. Then I made the final move. Pamela's brand wasn't just her, it was built using my platform's backend, my archived ad data, and my audience metrics that she had accessed while logged into our joint workspace before the breakup. That in itself wasn't illegal until we found she exported client lists. Names, emails, conversion analytics, trade secrets, the kind companies lose millions over. I presented the evidence, not to the court, to the board of the major e-commerce platform where her brand was hosted. Pamela's store was delisted, permanently, all data flagged. Her influencer account received a digital blacklist designation, industry speak for, never again. She went silent. For 2 full weeks, she vanished from every platform. People speculated she was rebranding, that she'd come back with a podcast or some vague mental health journey arc. But then came the final blow. William turned. Whether from guilt or desperation, I didn't care. He'd been cornered by tax authorities digging into the shell company accounts. He cut a deal. He testified, swore under oath that Pamela knew everything, that she orchestrated the licensing deals, that she made the decision to push the stolen candle formulas first, that she agreed to leak her own scandal to gain sympathy right before the product launch. He handed it over in exchange for a lighter sentence and an NDA-protected settlement. I watched the footage of his statement. He looked different, weaker, bloated with guilt or alcohol, I couldn't tell, but for the first time in my life I saw him small. It didn't make me happy, it just made me finished. The final press release went live 3 days later, clear, unapologetic, legally tight. Pamela Rose permanently banned from licensing, manufacturing, or marketing any fragrance, beauty, or wellness products on US soil under any alias or brand. Her digital career, dead. Her public image, erased. No hate campaign, no death threats, just corporate silence, the kind that never fades. I didn't dance, I didn't toast. I just stood in my apartment that evening, staring at the single candle Marva left me labeled Justice. It wasn't scented, it didn't need to be. The air already smelled like the aftermath of war. A week later, I visited my parents. My father opened the door in his usual neutral expression, but I could see the pride behind his eyes. He didn't say anything poetic, just clapped me once on the shoulder and said, "You handled it." My mother hugged me longer than usual. At dinner, no one said Pamela's name, we didn't need to. The absence said enough. Afterward, my sister handed me a small gift box. Inside was the engagement ring I had once given Pamela. "I had it cleaned," she said. "Figured you'd want it back." I stared at it for a long moment, then I smiled and dropped it into the fire. Let metal melt where loyalty failed. Back at the office, Marva was waiting. I found her in the creative lab, reorganizing the new seasonal line. "Did you read the final statement?" she asked without turning. I did. "And? It's done." She turned to me, eyes steady. "You sure?" I nodded. "There's nothing left to take." Marva walked closer. "What about giving? What do you mean? You've spent a year burning, building, winning. But what are you giving yourself?" I didn't answer immediately. Because I hadn't thought about it. I'd been too focused on clearing the wreckage to imagine the rebuilding. Marva pulled something from her beehives. A small wax mold. It wasn't a candle, it was a sculpture. 2 hands, holding flame. "I started making this after your first launch," she said. "It reminded me of you, always carrying the heat, but never let it fall." I looked at it for a long time, then I looked at her. At the one person who had walked through the fire beside me and never asked for warmth in return. I finally spoke. I think I'm ready to give. She smiled. Then take a break. I don't know how. I do. A month later, we boarded a plane to Iceland. No business, no PR, no interviews. Just cold air, quiet roads, and hot springs under open skies. We stayed in a cabin with no internet. Marva brought sketchbooks, I brought old journal entries I never finished. And one night, under the aurora, I asked her, "Did you ever think this is where we'd end up?" She laughed. "Honestly, no. Why'd you stay?" She shrugged. "Because you never asked me to change." I turned to her fully. "Marva?" "Yeah?" "I think I want to build something new. Something that doesn't need to burn first." She took my hand. "I already know the name." "Yeah?" She smiled. Kindling. That night, we lit one last candle, not for revenge, not for grief, but for the beginning. 6 months later, Kindling launched quietly, no influencer campaigns, no dramatic reveals, just warmth, intention, and craftsmanship. Within 3 months, it outsold Closure, because people don't just want fire, they want purpose, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't burning things down. I was lighting the way forward. Pamela resurfaced once, on a private blog, under a pseudonym. The post was bitter, defensive. She blamed the cancelled culture, the courts, the men in her life. She never once used my name, she didn't need to, everyone knew. The post got 5 comments, 2 likes, then it disappeared. William moved to another state, tried to become a real estate agent. My uncle calls sometimes, we talk, but we don't say his name either. Some people stay erased, others rise again. Me, I still walk with the fire, but I no longer carry it in my fists. It sits beside me now, warming, not burning, and when people ask what happened between me and her, I just smile and say, "She kissed my cousin on my birthday." Then I pause. And I lit a candle on her career. And every time I say it, I feel whole.